So in my presentation today, I'll put a bit of context about anger. We'll discuss a few reasons for getting angry in the general population, discuss a few anger management techniques that may work or may not work, and look at two case studies to demonstrate the efficacy of different anger management approaches. Okay. But first of all, just a personal story to discuss a few ideas about anger. I returned from a trip in Europe a couple of weeks ago, and to get back to Australia I had to fly from Heathrow. I had to get across London, from southeast London to Heathrow during peak hour. Not just myself, with my 2-year-old daughter and a lot of baggage. So that situation is very stressful, very demanding, and create a lot of issues, a lot of triggers, which may create anger in a person. I'll just go through those to illustrate why, in the general population again, people may become angry. So, one of them would be irritants. The train was hot, it was crowded, it was uncomfortable, it was noisy, smelly at times. I was tired, my daughter was tired. These are all little factors which, when they build up, can provoke anger. Another level would be costs. So there might be, financial costs. I could have left my bag on the train very easily. It was so crowded. Could have missed the plane. That would have been a financial cost. Other costs such as loss of face. If my daughter was crying or having a tantrum, for some people that would be a loss of face for them. The third level, transgressions. We all have rules about the way the world should be. And if those rules are transgressed or broken, that can be a very big reason for anger. For instance, while I was trying to get on the train, the passengers didn't move down to let me on. You would think if someone's with a child trying to get somewhere, people might try and be helpful. Didn't happen in this case. Not getting up to let my daughter sit down. It was very crowded. She was standing on the bag, holding on to the top of the thing, just trying to hold on. No one would let us sit down. So these are all things which can cause anger. For someone who's not had a trauma background, that would, I guess, be indicative of maybe in a refugee context, if you're escaping a situation, there would be a lot of those things, but also with a lot of other context behind it as well. Okay. So, anger management in this situation, from Overcoming Anger and Irritability by William Davis. First of all, we have the trigger. Those are the things I just talked about. The irritants, the costs and transgressions. What a person would do then, they would judge these triggers and see whether they're something which, particular for them, whether they create anger in them, and then the feelings of anger may appear. Also, we have inhibitions, external inhibitions and internal inhibitions, which may prevent the anger, though we feel it, from being shown outside to the rest of the world. And then if they're not strong enough, then the response is anger is shown. If they are strong enough, then anger may not be shown. And that's basically, through those different points, how anger is managed, again, in a general population. In my case, of course, the trigger was the uncomfortable train, worrying about the safety of my daughter, being late for the plane. What I would do is, I guess, at that level, just an awareness of one's triggers is helpful to manage anger. Monitoring one's level of anger, removing oneself from the situation would help at that stage. Obviously, I couldn't while I was on the train, but once I knew the journey was going to end eventually, and I could get off there. Obviously, my judgment was that people should help me, when I'm in that difficult situation. If I was going to rationalize that cognitively, I could say, well, other people, they're in the same situation, they don't have to help me. Actually, I commuted in London for 8 years, and I know what it's like, and anyone who's taken up space, you're not very happy about it, so I can understand that. My inhibitions would relate to, I guess, internal ones, that one should not get angry in public. Maybe one should not get angry in front of one's children. That might be inhibitions which prevent the anger showing. External ones where, obviously, if you're angry, the chance of getting any help is pretty much minimal. So that would be another thing. So my response, hopefully using these, it's actually from CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. My response would be to remain calm, focus on getting to the airport. That's what I tried to do. So that's general anger management techniques. Works for, in some cases, not everyone, but it can be helpful. So I thought I'll apply these techniques to refugee trauma. This is one of 2 case studies. It's related, my client's an Afghan male, 24 years old. He was from Christmas Island and came to Australia. His family was still in Pakistan. He had traumatic grief which related to his other family members who he persuaded them to leave the country, and on their way out of the country they were killed. So he felt a lot of grief and guilt about that. Brought up anger as an issue to work on in our second session. It's actually quite early for a lot of clients. And I thought, great, it's something discrete to work on, anger management techniques, I'll give it a try. And that's what I did. This is a genogram, it's him there in the middle. This is family here who were killed. Okay. He also presented with some other issues such as depression, guilt for what happened, quite a few post-trauma frustrations, such as obviously his family overseas who were in danger. His mother's health was poor, his child's health was poor, and had a lot of financial problems like a lot of new arrivals. Okay. So I tried the anger management technique. So at the trigger stage, his costs to himself or his family compared to my cost would be, I mean, there wouldn't be really a comparison between the two. His cost was his family being killed, his immediate family are in danger. His transgressions would be that for everyone the rule thou shalt not kill. It's obviously a rule in most or all cultures. So that would be a big transgression of a rule that everyone would have. So that would cause a lot of anger and irritability for him. His cognitions, like his appraisal, the judgment would be, I guess he said things like, the world is not fair, why did this happen? And I mean, they're very legitimate things to think at such a stage. You know, if you want to cognitively reappraise these, well, we did try, it didn't work very well. It was in a way too early for him. So obviously he had a lot of feelings of anger, and his inhibitions, like everyone, he had his rules about the world and how we should present ourselves, but they weren't necessarily strong enough in this case to hold his anger, which was very strong. Therefore his response was a lot of angry outbursts, particularly towards, he had some family members here, so a lot of his anger outbursts were related to them. So anger management techniques from a CBT perspective didn't really work in this case. I guess it wasn't the right time and maybe not the right ideas at this point. He still wasn't in a place of safety. His family was still in a lot of danger in Pakistan. He was still had these post-trauma frustrations about family illness and such like. So we tried one session with this, it didn't work. We went back to work on a few other issues, and they were a little bit more successful. Okay. So then, actually, a lot of clients present with anger. This is another client after the first one, who presented with anger. So I thought maybe try a different approach. Okay. So this was a 39-year-old Iraqi Assyrian woman. She has 4 children, 3 teenage children, and a small child. Again, traumatic loss and grief. Her husband was killed in 2007. I think maybe 2.5 years before I met her. She was still very much grieving. What she said was, "It's as if I'm still there." I.e., the emotions she felt then were very much the emotions she's feeling now. And the feeling that the losses she'd suffered cannot be recovered. She said, "My life is over. I live only for my children." So, but her anger was directed at herself, at her husband, for leaving her, towards her family probably most of all, and she felt that they were her triggers, that her family were making her irritable and stressed, and she was responding overzealously, and she obviously felt guilty after that. She felt like her anger responses were out of proportion to the current events. There's a genogram there. She also had post-trauma frustrations, like a lot of clients. She has relatives in Syria who are waiting to come to Australia. There's still no word when, as far as I know, that they're here. They've had their interviews, but they're still waiting. She's having 3 teenagers and a 2-year-old. That would cause a lot of stress for a lot of people. Financial issues and her own health pains, somatic pains that she suffers as well. But anger was what she said was her main issue, her main worry, what she wanted to work on particularly. So again, the same as the first case study. If we use the anger management techniques, we feel that the triggers are very strong. They would be beyond what you would be able to, I guess, manage at the time if her family members had been killed. A judgment that what happened was wrong is accurate, and again, her inhibitions are reduced. Possibly some refugees maybe have a sense of entitlement that because they had a loss, they should be, I suppose, recompensed in some way. So that may be a factor in that. Her response, again, the same as the first case study. Angry outbursts, not sure where it's coming from. Very frightening because it's very different from her, I guess, presentation before this trauma. So for her, it was a very difficult situation. Okay. So maybe look at why his anger is different in the context of refugee trauma. Why these anger management techniques that I tried before didn't work. I guess first of all, suffering a traumatic loss is, I guess, it's a major thing. It's something which, beyond what I guess we assume the world would be, in everyday life. Someone being killed just because of who they are would be something which we wouldn't expect to happen. So it's traumatic. It's very very quick loss, very hard to understand. So it's very difficult to overcome. That would be in the context of many losses. There would be, I guess, a cultural loss if someone had to leave their country, if they came to Australia. I guess also other losses, I guess, financial. They leave all their possessions, have to move and start again. A loss of status, a loss of other relatives, because families are quite often split, either still in the country or around the world. So it's important to remember all these other losses, which I guess compound the original traumatic loss. And I guess because culturally there's a loss. As Professor Silo said, there's not the kind of culturally sanctioned ways of dealing with anger, which there may have been before. A lot of clients, even from a more communal kind of background, they seem much more isolated here in Australia, and they're dealing with their anger on their own, and I guess there's a lot of a certain amount of shame about being angry, and so they're not able to deal with it on that level. Of course, violation of human rights, of course, is something that's very hard to deal with. She said this should not have happened, and she's right. It's something which goes beyond what should happen in everyday life, and that leads to a feeling of wanting some kind of reparation. And when you have that feeling, that you can get, I guess, kind of stuck because you don't get onto the rehabilitation because you're thinking, how can I be recompensed for this? Of course, for refugees or anyone traumatized, there are a lot of other symptoms which compound these feelings of anger. For my clients, constant headaches, somatic pain in the legs and back, poor sleep, very common, a general kind of physiological reactivity from the traumas that she suffered. She was from Iraq and lived through the invasion and that kind of thing, so she would have a lot of I suppose anxiety, which can help. I guess that compounds the anger in itself. Should have a lot of current stresses to do with family, family abroad, family in Australia, financial pressures, health pressures. They can all be factors. Feelings of guilt, and obviously waiting for a family to come to Australia would be another factor. Okay. So for this case, the outcomes, settlement stress is reduced, and for a lot of clients that can give them some space to start to work on other issues. For other clients, when they have a lot of settlement stresses, they're still in the survival mode, and they're just trying to achieve a relative coming to Australia, maybe get disability support pension for some or somewhere good to live, and they're very much focused on that, and when that's taken away, then a lot of their symptoms come to the fore. For other clients, settlement stress is reduced and they feel they can work on things. Luckily, that was the case for this lady. I guess an awareness of the source of anger for the client. If she was reacting to things that were happening day to day within her family, an awareness that obviously she knew her anger was because of the traumatic loss, but I guess awareness all her anger stems from there. That can be a help. I guess it's kind of a psychoeducation tool that they can be aware of their anger. And starting to accept the loss, as I just emphasized, starting rehabilitation rather than compensation is important. Some clients are there already. Other ones, because of the size of the loss, they think there should be some kind of reparation. And as I say, that can make clients stuck. In fact, for this client, she said I'm stuck. She said other widows are not grieving anymore, and she said 3 years later she was still wearing the black, still very much grieving. I guess it's important to say the anger remains. It's not like it was completely dissipated, but in this case she was learning to manage it, and maybe some CBT techniques such as monitoring one's anger, taking time out, those kind of things can be helpful. At that stage, she was still not ready for homework in a CBT way, but she was able to take some ideas and use them for herself. I also referred her for acupuncture, and she's had 4 or 5 sessions of that, and that's been going very well. I guess the non-verbal kind of approaches, particularly she felt a lot of anger just here, a lot of grief, and I think that's been moved, I guess, since she started the acupuncture. I just mentioned that I finished with this, because in EIP we see clients in their first year, so I finished with this client about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So she still has a lot of things to work on, but hopefully she's going in the right direction. Okay. So, working on anger in a refugee context, conclusion. So it's important to look at, I guess, help the client move on to rehabilitation rather than compensation. An awareness that anger is a feature of grief and loss. I mean, it's I'd say not something we should be afraid of. I mean, it's something which is very much part of a refugee experience, and I'd say most of my clients have exhibited or talked about their level of anger, so it's important to take that into consideration. Trying to reappraise the situation is not very helpful, particularly in the early stages. Those kind of cognitive reappraisal, CBT techniques, not always of benefit, particularly for refugee clients. An awareness of the frustrations or stresses in the post-conflict or post-trauma environment are very important. A lot of clients, they're very aware of these things and feel them very strongly. And it's important to empathise with that. And of course, the level of injustice, the violation of their human rights, also something which is going to stay with them. It's not going to go away. It's something that we need to be aware of. Okay. Thank you.